Hey, welcome to episode 2 of the Premarriage Podcast with Dave and Ashley Willis. We are so glad you're here. We're so glad you're taking this investment of time to build a solid foundation for the future of your relationship together. And we hope that this is encouragement for you. We've got a great episode today. If you missed our first episode on prenuptial agreements, which isn't just the legal document, but more importantly, it's about those things that you need to talk about and come to agreement on before you say I do. Go back and check out episode 1, but we've got a great episode for you today.
We do. We are talking about something that's so important, and that is how to address things that are irritating to you or annoying to you or concerning to you when it comes to your future spouse. And now is a great time to address those things. So let's dive into today's episode. Oh, I am very excited about this particular topic today because I do think that talking about this before marriage will save you a world of hurt and arguments and misunderstandings. And that is how to tell your spouse or future spouse, I guess, in this setting, when something irritates you that they do.
Yes, and this is delicate.
It's very delicate. But you may think, oh my goodness, we don't need to watch this one or listen to this one because I am not irritated by anything. But the longer you're together, the more you get to know each other. And then as you join your household together and you're living together, you will notice some things that your spouse does differently that you're like, I'm not sure I like that.
It's different.
And so we're going to talk about how to address that in a loving way.
Yeah, even right now I'm drinking coffee. I know I get coffee breath and I smell like I have this old man breath with coffee.
Your breath is awesome.
And she's leaning away as she says that. Your breath is awesome. I'm not breathing though. And no, marriage is going to have so many opportunities to annoy each other. It just is. And because you're two different people, and you do things differently, and you each have your own little quirks. Like for me, like I have this quirk where I cannot stand the sound of crunching. Like people that when you crunch food in my ear, I fantasize about you being tortured. And it's not right, but it's an issue. And so Ashley, she loves to crunch stuff. Like
I'm a cruncher.
She right now at this second wishes she was crunching ice or chips or something crunchy, carrots. She doesn't eat anything soft.
Why? It's so much fun to crunch, you know?
And so early on, like in our relationship, like I was afraid to tell her that the sound of crunching made me like lose my mind. And so finally, instead of just leaving the room every time.
Well, because at first you would disappear.
I would just disappear.
I'd be in mid-sentence, crunching, talking.
Get up and leave. And so finally I just said, listen, it's my issue, it's not yours, but like I've always had this issue with crunching. And you've got to be able to eat freely in your house. You have to. But I also I have a hard time with it. So I'm going to just put in earbuds when you're crunching ice, or I'm going to go to another room. Is that cool? Can we just come to an agreement that that's okay? And we both have grace for each other. And she was like, yeah, no problem. And so now she gets to crunch and I get to.
I know. I'll even go in another room and I'm like, I'm crunching. I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Right. I'm going to have a moment.
But then I'll go back to the fridge and get the crunchy ice. And then he's like, okay, maybe it's going to be a little longer.
Yeah, but, go to town on it. But I do all kinds of annoying stuff. So
Well, you want me to tell you one that you had to tell me out of the gate that was just interesting about flossing your feet?
Oh, that's gross.
But it's the truth. Okay. When you marry someone, you're living with them, you learn some of their just gross habits. I'll just call it what it is. So I remember early on, Dave, he was sitting down on the couch with me. It is a lot. And I'm just sorry, we're just going to go there. Okay. So he was sitting we were sitting down and I noticed him, he took off, he had just come home from work. He took off his shoes. This is really early in our marriage. Took off his shoes, took off his sock, went to his foot and started basically flossing his feet with his sock. And I look at him and I'm like, I'm weirded out a little bit. I'm disgusted. I'm very confused. I don't know what's happening. And he looks up from it and he's like, oh, I should probably tell you what I'm doing. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what's going on there. And he's like, well, I have athlete's foot and I'm flossing my feet because they really itch, especially after, walking around work all day and my feet getting hot. And he's like, I know it's probably really gross. I can go in the other room if you want me to. And I was perplexed because I was like, oh, okay. And my mind is like, athlete's foot, flossing the feet, okay. And now, he's fine now.
Yeah.
But back then, it's
under control.
I understood.
Lotrimin.
It's just better.
Not a sponsor of this podcast. However, it did help my feet.
You get your antifungal cream.
That's right.
Take
That's all
care
it takes.
of it.
But at the time, I was flaring up and it would itch so bad between my toes. And I was like, the only way that I can bring relief to this is to pull off my sock and to scrape that sock if you're watching this on YouTube, you can kind of get an example here. You know, I'm not going to take my shoe off. You know, I just rubbed between the toes, and it felt heavenly. It felt amazing.
And I really wasn't grossed out. I was more like impressed that you found a way to manage the itch. But, you know, gross things are going to happen. You're going to know each other well. Like right now, you're like, oh my gosh, I would never, like even if that was my problem, I would never show my spouse. But you guys, after 20 years together, you're going to know everything.
You're going to see it all.
You're going to know more than you want to know.
Yeah.
And you just have to talk about it. It's really important. And so, you know, that's something where I eventually did tell him, I'm like, you know, I really don't want to look at that. So
I'm going to do that in the other room.
I'm not judging you, but maybe do that on your own private time. And I remember too, like there's things when it comes to chores, you know, or how you're used to living. And Dave in college, which is when we met, I had seen his dorm room. Like I knew what the dorm room looked like. And he had an especially messy roommate,
yes,
who we loved, but very messy. And I didn't know if that was him or you or maybe a combo. So when we got married, I noticed that there was a tinge of you that was messy, but not crazy messy, not like your roommate. But I had to lovingly say, hey, can you just take that to the laundry room? Because if I have to look at that again, I just get resentful by the day if I have to look at your dirty clothes on the floor.
Right, and I had
just say it lovingly.
I had a routine though from college. It was not a good one, but like I had different piles of clothing. There was like a clean pile, a partly clean pile, a somewhat clean pile, and then a dirty pile. She, very black and white, clothing was either clean or dirty. There's no in between. And I just think that's small-minded. No, I'm just kidding. She has a higher standard, very high, you know, a higher standard of cleanliness. And I tried to rise to that standard as a way to honor her. And then she was patient with me in the fact that I was kind of a caveman coming out of you know, living.
You weren't a caveman. Honestly, you're pretty clean. But I'm really particular. And there's one thing, the longer we've been married, Dave, you know, he likes to have piles of things, and and it's my problem. I am anal retentive about my home, and I like things to be organized. I like things to be very clean, and so I would notice a pile. And so if I see a pile through my house, I literally, and I don't even realize I'm doing it, I will pick it up, put it where it's going. Like I just have this like ninja hand thing going on with trying to keep the house in order, and I do it with our boys too. And so one day, and this is not that long ago, Dave was like, listen, I love how clean and organized you are, but sometimes I just need a pile. And he goes, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put the pile under the bed. I want you to act like it's not there. You don't see it. Act like it's not there. You're gonna know it's there because I don't wanna have secrets in our marriage. But I need you to walk by the bed and know it's not there because I need to pull from my pile. And I'm like, I feel like that's a good compromise.
I feel like we can do that.
Yeah,
see? And you have to be able to just talk through those things and believe the best in each other.
You know, so many engaged couples spend so much time and money on preparing for their wedding, but they often forget that they need to prepare for their marriage. Well, we have got a great new resource for you, and it's called Preparing for I Do.
That's right. This video course is going to have so much information to help spark meaningful conversations for your future marriage and to help you set a solid foundation for your life together. The videos aren't all that are part of the course. There's also a powerful assessment tool designed by Jimmy Evans, which is going to lead you through some of the most important conversations you've ever had as a couple. To access all this and much more, check out the site premarriage.com. Marriage, it's not your mission to change your spouse, to change up their wiring, to change who they are. But marriage at the same time should stretch us and grow us and help us become the best version of who we are. And so I couldn't just say, well, I'm just a slob and that's how God made me. It's like, no, that's some bad habits I've gotten into. And yes, I might have a little bit different standard of cleanliness than she has, but since she has the higher standard and I want to rise to a higher standard, I'm going to try to rise there. But at the same time, prepare some grace and some space for the fact that my unique wiring likes to have a little pile of clothes I can pull from under the bed.
This pile.
And let's be able to just
and there's nothing wrong
agree with that and be okay with that. And marriage is going to have a million little conversations and compromises like that.
Yes.
And it's not about whose way is right, whose way is wrong. It's about how do we come to a place of agreement where this home can be a safe place for us both, and it can be the best it can be, and we're bringing out the best in one another.
Yep.
If you didn't listen to last episode, go and listen to that about prenuptial agreements. And we're not just talking about the legal document, we're talking more importantly about those conversations you should be having right now at this stage in your relationship, prenuptially, before you say I do, to really outline what what do we want our home and life and future family and everything else to look like? And again, all of this that we're doing on the podcast is really meant to point you to the ultimate pre-marriage planning tool, and that's our video course called Preparing for I Do. And you can find that at premarriage.com. And part of the Preparing for I Do course has an assessment tool that, and I'm going to keep talking about it because I think it's the single best pre-marriage resource I've ever seen. And it's just the assessment tool as part of the video course is a list of questions to ask each other that are meant to spark conversations, meant to teach you new things about one another, and meant to help point you to a place where you have a plan and common ground about every aspect of your marriage, of like, who's going to do each of the chores around the house? Like, what is our dream for our house? Where do we want to live? What do we want it to look like? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? How can we complement one another? And getting very, very specific, because a lot of times in the dating phase, it can kind of be heads in the clouds a little bit, where we're not really digging in deep to like, what's this going to look like when we've got, it's 3 a.m. and a baby waking us up and we get spit up all over us and we're exhausted and we're dealing with financial pressure and, you're cranky in the morning and I'm like chipper in the morning and we're just opposite in a lot of ways. Like, how do we navigate that? And let's decide those things right now, and also be flexible that life's going to keep throwing us curveballs like Ashley talked about, and that we're going to be respectful to each other when those curveballs come. And how are we going to, coming back to the specific topic of this episode, how do we lovingly point out when our spouse, our partner is doing something that just annoys us, or maybe even, like, to take it a step further, is actually harmful? It's not just like a quirky, annoying habit, but they're doing something that's downright sinful or potentially dangerous. Mm-hmm. And we have to have the ability in marriage to hold each other accountable. Yes. Not to control one another, not for one spouse to have this kind of domineering control over the other, but for both of us, through mutual respect and mutual submission, to be able to really, really speak into each other's lives and say, listen, I'm seeing this habit in you that just, you're not yourself. It's pulling you in this wrong direction. You're spending all this time with this, this friend or in this place or with this hobby, and it's pulling you away from our home. And I feel like it's gotten out of balance. And let's talk about that. And for your marriage to be a safe place to have those conversations. Absolutely. And when you come to your spouse, once you're married, and you say, I have this huge concern about what this thing that you're doing is doing to you and also doing to us, and I just love you, and I feel like you doing this, when you come home to me, you're not yourself. And I'm really concerned about that, because I know that those things that you say to me, you don't mean. And I know you don't want to hurt us. I don't know you don't want to hurt our relationship. And maybe as you're watching this, maybe you've noticed a behavior in your fiance that you're concerned about. This is the perfect time to talk about that, because odds are that's not going to change magically once you get married. Again, like Dave said, you can't expect them to change. That's why we're doing this Preparing for I Do course and this podcast, because we want to help you to talk about these very important issues. And so if you notice, like, there's this bad habit that your spouse has, and it's always, your future spouse has, and it's always kind of bothered you, and you've told yourself, well, it's not that big of a deal, and probably when we get married, it'll change. I'm telling you, honestly, that this is your moment to talk about it. This is your moment that once you stop watching this and listening to this, that you have a conversation and say, listen, I was watching this pre-marriage podcast, I was listening to it, and I really felt like the Holy Spirit was kind of pricking my heart and saying that we need to talk about this issue. You may or may not know that I am really concerned about this particular thing that you do, or this habit that you have. And I want to be honest with you before we're married, that this is something that's always bothered me. And it's bothered me because I care so much about you, and it changes you. This thing that you're doing changes you. And I think it's a bad habit in your life. And because I love you, I want to help you get the help that you need. I'm not judging you. This is something you've probably just become accustomed to doing, but I want to get you the help that you need, because I want you to be healthy. I want us to have a great relationship. I don't want anything to come between us when it comes to our marriage. And so right now, before we get married, if we need to go to counseling, if I need to help you, if it's an addiction, if I need to help you walk through recovery, if I need to help you go to the support group, whatever I can do to be in your corner, I want to be that person that can really help you get the help that you need. And I need you to also tell me whatever I can do to help you. Maybe you've had it in your mind and heart that this is a problem, but you've been afraid to really admit it to me. But I'm going to be your spouse. I need to be that safe place. And so let's walk through this together. And I'm so thankful that this woman has very wisely helped me see blind spots in my own life, really all through our 20 years of marriage, to help point out things that I might not even be seeing. Like, if I'm responding to stress consistently in a way that's just making me, angry or frustrated or prickly around the house, or having a sharpness in my tone toward her, toward the kids, even when I'm not mad at them directly, but I'm just dealing with stress in a way that's unhealthy, for her to very gently and lovingly say, like, sweetie, you don't seem like yourself. Like, what can I do to help you? You might not realize it, but you're just coming across as angry or really frustrated all the time. And I know we all have moments like that, but this has turned into more of like a season, and it's kind of taken over your personality. And there have been different seasons through our marriage where that's happened, and where she's, very lovingly, not in a way that's like condemning, like, well, you're just being a jerk, but instead coming through and being disarming and encouraging. And I'm so appreciative of that. And both her approach and also like just her clear words to say, listen, you're not yourself and I'm concerned, makes me take pause and take a step back. And there was one of those seasons where, she encouraged me to go talk to a counselor, and I did, and it ended up being like a really, really helpful and meaningful. And that we talk a lot about counseling both as a couple and individually. Absolutely. I think as you're preparing for I Do, sitting down with a counselor or a pastor to be part of that process, and being open in the future to meet with counselors individually or together as a couple, that's not a sign of weakness. There's no stigma there. That's a sign of strength. The Bible says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. You don't have to figure it all out on your own. Sitting down sometimes with someone who's trained, who's impartial, whose only agenda is to help you, can do wonders to help you work through issues and let go of past baggage and see blind spots. And you and your spouse need to be able to do that for each other, both now in this state in your relationship, and then of course through the whole course of your marriage. And Ashley's certainly done that for me. I've tried to do that for her, though she doesn't have nearly as many flaws as I do, so I don't have as many opportunities to. But you got to be able to do that for each other. And when those words come, don't get defensive. Don't put your fists up and say, let's duke it out, or well, I might do that, but you do this. Don't make it a fight. Instead, receive it as they're telling me this because they love me and they want what's best for me.
I mean, there was a time when I was going through anxiety and depression, and we go deeper, into this in the In Sickness and in Health part of the Preparing for I Do video course, but I'll give you the short of it here. I went through a very long battle with it, and when I was going through it, sometimes when you're in the midst of an illness of any kind or a struggle of any kind, you don't realize how bad it really is because you've gotten used to the status quo. You've gotten used to kind of how you feel all the time. And I was losing sleep. I was staying up all hours of the night because at night was when it was the worst. And I remember Dave really kind of calling me out and saying, listen, you're not yourself. I'm really concerned about you. You're exhausted all the time. I want to help you. And I remember he would get me books that would help me. He also got a list of counselors and said, I don't care who it is. And I would make excuses. I'd be like, especially at that time, I'm like, we don't have the money. I mean, our insurance didn't cover counseling. And he's like, your mental health, there's no price tag you can put on it. Like, we'll make it work. We'll figure it out. And he just reassured me that he's not going to leave me because you believe lies. We're in the midst of a mental illness. And he would just reassure me all the time, I'm in your corner. I love you. I'm not going anywhere. Here's what we can do, to help you. And he didn't force it on me. He didn't rush me in my healing. And so, maybe you or your fiance, maybe one of you is dealing with that right now. And maybe you're under some kind of, maybe it's mental health, or maybe it's some kind of pressure at work. Whatever it is, talk about it now and say, listen, I know we're not married yet, but we're engaged and we're going to spend our lives together. And I want to be that person in your corner. So right now you can start talking about how you can help each other and whether or not counseling would be a next step. And I think sometimes we wait until things are so much worse to go to counseling, but go as soon as you know there's a problem, because odds are you're going to find some kind of benefit from it and you're going to see things in a new light. And I would just encourage you too, if prayer is not currently a part of your relationship, if it's not a habit that you have, let today be a day where you start praying with and for each other, because prayer has been a lifeline throughout our entire marriage. And I know it could be for you as well.
Man, that's such good advice. Guys, we dive into all these discussions much deeper in the Preparing for I Do course. And that also includes that assessment tool that you and your fiance can work through together with the best list of pre-marriage questions to ask each other I've ever seen collected in one place. It's just such a valuable tool. You can access all of that at premarriage.com. premarriagecourse.com. Thanks for being a part of today's episode, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.